The emergency council meeting was called at 0400 hours. Not ideal timing, but then again, nobody expected the entire Sector 9 Wildlife Preserve to attempt a mass exodus. My name is Krell, and I'm the head administrator for the Galactic Wildlife Conservation Network. I've been doing this job for 23 cycles, and I've seen some bizarre situations. Vexillion swamp beasts refusing to eat. Crystalloid birds building nests in the ventilation systems. Once, a plutonian slug somehow got into the cafeteria and terrorized the staff for 6 hours. But this was unprecedented. Let me get this straight, I said, rubbing my 3 eyes in exhaustion. Every single animal in Zone 12 tried to leave with the human? My assistant, Vryn, nodded frantically. Her antennae were twitching, which meant she was either nervous or caffeinated. Probably both. Every single one. The Andromedan wolves, the Kepler bears, the micro-dragons from Sirius B, even the venomous spike lizards from Gamma Station, and those things hate everyone. I stared at the security footage playing on the holographic display. There he was, the human. His visitor badge identified him as Marcus Webb from Earth, Sector 2814. Average height for his species, brown hair, wearing what humans called a jacket and jeans. Nothing remarkable whatsoever, except for the fact that he had somehow become the most popular being in the entire preserve within 47 minutes of arrival. The footage showed him walking through the predator zone, which, let me remind you, requires 3 separate safety protocols and a signed waiver acknowledging possible death. The Andromedan wolves, apex predators that had killed 2 handlers last cycle, were following him like puppies. Not attacking, not growling, following. One of them, a massive alpha male named Crusher, was literally wagging his tail, wagging his tail. How is this possible? I muttered, zooming in on the image. Vryn pulled up another file. It gets worse. Or better. I don't know anymore. Look at this. The next video showed Marcus in the aquatic dome. The Colluvian sea serpents, notoriously aggressive creatures that we kept behind triple reinforced plasma shields, were pressing their faces against the barriers trying to get closer to him. One of them, Big Bertha as the staff called her, appeared to be making cooing sounds. Cooing sounds. These were creatures that once swallowed a cargo ship whole. Maybe he has some kind of pheromone, I suggested desperately. Earth species produce all sorts of chemical signals. Vryn shook her head. We ran a full atmospheric analysis. Nothing unusual. No pheromones, no sonic frequencies, no psychic emanations. He's just a regular human. I watched as Marcus bent down to examine a small plutonian rabbit in the herbivore section. The creature, normally skittish around anything larger than a bread box, hopped directly into his hands. He smiled, scratched it behind its ears, and said something the audio sensors couldn't pick up. The rabbit's eyes practically glowed with contentment. Then things got really weird. The footage showed Marcus moving toward the exit after his scheduled tour ended. That's when every animal within visual range began moving toward the barriers. The wolves howled. The birds screeched. The reptiles, which barely moved on a good day, started scrambling toward the edges of their enclosures. Even the plants in the botanical zone seemed to lean in his direction, though my scientific training told me that was probably impossible. Probably. Security had to form a barrier, Vryn explained, fast-forwarding through the chaos. The animals were going absolutely insane. We had containment breaches in 4 zones. 4. Do you know how much paperwork that generates? I did, unfortunately. I was going to be filling out forms for the next 3 months. Did anyone ask the human what he did? I asked, praying for a simple explanation. Vryn pulled up the interview transcript. He said, and I quote, "I just talk to them like normal animals. I have 2 dogs at home." End quote. Talk to them. Like normal animals. As if conversing with an Andromedan wolf was equivalent to chatting with an Earth canine. The human confusion was somehow even more baffling than the animal reaction that I leaned back in my chair, feeling a headache forming in my primary cerebral lobe. What about Dr. Yalvex? What's his assessment? Dr. Yalvex was our chief xenobiologist, a Corinthian with 17 doctoral degrees and an ego the size of a small moon. If anyone could explain this, it would be him, Vryn winced. He's currently sedated in the medical bay. He had what the staff is calling a scientific breakdown after reviewing the data. He kept muttering something about rewriting his entire thesis on interspecies behavior. Perfect. Just perfect that I pulled up the footage one more time, watching Marcus Webb scratch the alpha wolf behind its ears while simultaneously preventing a micro-dragon from nesting in his hair. He was laughing, actually laughing. Meanwhile, my highly trained staff stood frozen in terror behind the safety barriers, hands hovering over emergency containment protocols. "Sir," Vryn said quietly, "the Galactic Council is demanding a response. This incident has been classified as a Level 7 anomaly. They want recommendations by end of cycle." I knew what I had to do. It was going to be controversial. It was going to cause problems. But after 23 cycles in this job, I'd learned to trust my instincts. "Send a priority message to all wildlife preserves, zoos, and conservation centers across the galaxy," I said slowly. "Effective immediately, humans are banned from visiting any facility containing non-Earth species until further notice." Vryn's antennae drooped. "That seems extreme." "Extreme?" I pulled up the final piece of footage, the one that had convinced me this was necessary. It showed the moment right before Marcus left, when he turned back and waved at the animals. Every single creature visible in frame stopped whatever they were doing and watched him go. Some pressed against barriers. Some made distressed sounds. One of the Andromedan wolves actually started crying. An apex predator. Crying. "Look at them, Vryn. Really look. Those animals don't just like him. They bonded with him in less than an hour. What happens if more humans visit? What if this is a species-wide trait?" The ban went into effect immediately, which, as you might expect, caused an absolute uproar. Human rights organizations across 12 systems filed complaints. Earth's diplomatic corps sent 17 angry messages in the first hour alone. The Galactic Tourism Board threatened to revoke our operating licenses. And somehow, impossibly, Marcus Webb himself became a galactic celebrity overnight. Because of course he did. "Sir, you need to see this," Vryn said, bursting into my office 3 days after the incident. She looked like she hadn't slept, which was concerning because her species only needed sleep once a week. She threw a data pad onto my desk. The screen showed news feeds from across the galaxy, all featuring the same story. Mysterious human charms, deadly predators. Earthman becomes animal whisperer. Is this species too dangerous for our zoos? That last headline made me snort. Too dangerous? We weren't the ones in danger. It gets better, Vryn said, her voice dripping with exhaustion. We've received reports from 37 other facilities. Apparently, this isn't an isolated incident. Humans have been visiting wildlife preserves across the galaxy for years, and the same thing keeps happening. We just never connected the dots because the incidents were spread out. I felt my stomach drop. Explain. She pulled up a file. Station Kepler, 442. 2 years ago. Human visitor named James Park. The containment area for Draxian panthers had to be reinforced because the animals kept trying to follow him home. They blamed it on faulty barriers. Another file appeared. Preserve Omega 9. 18 months ago. Human tourist named Aisha Okonkwo. The flying serpents from Titan 7 refused to eat for 3 days after she left. The staff thought they were sick. And then there's Outpost Meridian. Vryn continued, pulling up a particularly disturbing video. Human researcher named David Kowalski spent 6 months studying indigenous species. When he left, the animals staged what can only be described as a protest. They stopped interacting with the staff entirely. Productivity dropped 73%. I watched the footage in horrified fascination. Creatures of all sizes pressed against barriers, staring at the empty path where the human had departed. Some were making distressed noises. Others just sat there, waiting for him to come back. How did we miss this pattern? I asked, though I already knew the answer. The galaxy was enormous. Humans were relatively new to interstellar travel. And nobody, absolutely nobody, had thought to ask the question, what if humans are just naturally good with animals? All animals. Even the ones that shouldn't be possible. Vryn collapsed into a chair. The Galactic Council wants answers. Real ones this time. They're sending a team to interview Marcus Webb directly. Good luck with that, I muttered. According to our last intelligence report, he's been offered 37 different jobs as an animal handler, 12 movie deals, and 1 marriage proposal from a Vexillian princess. 42 jobs now, Vryn corrected, checking her messages. And the princess increased her offer to include a small moon. Of course she did. The council's investigative team arrived the following week, led by Ambassador Thex, a notoriously thorough centurion who once spent 3 years analyzing why a particular species of space moss grew faster on Tuesdays. If anyone could crack this mystery, it was him. The interview with Marcus took place in a secure facility, broadcast live to council members across 17 systems. I watched from my office, nursing what humans called coffee and wishing I'd chosen a different career path. Marcus sat in a chair that was slightly too small for him, looking confused and overwhelmed. The poor human had no idea he'd caused an intergalactic incident. Mr. Webb, Ambassador Thex began, his 12 fingers steepled in concentration. Can you explain, in your own words, how you interact with animals? Marcus blinked. I just treat them nice. Like, I talk to them, try to see what they're comfortable with, respect their space. It's not complicated. But you understand these were not Earth animals, Thex pressed. These were species you had never encountered before. Species that have injured or killed trained handlers. Yet they responded to you immediately. Yeah, that was weird, Marcus admitted, scratching his head. But animals are animals, right? They've got body language, emotions, social hierarchies. You just gotta pay attention and not be a jerk. The silence that followed was deafening. Thex leaned forward. You're saying your approach works on all animals? Universally, I guess. Marcus shrugged. I've never met an animal that didn't respond to kindness and respect. Even aggressive ones usually calm down if you give them space and don't act threatening. I watched as every council member in the room exchanged glances. They were thinking the same thing I was. This was either the most profound interspecies discovery in galactic history or the most dangerous, probably both. Mr. Webb, Thex said carefully, would you be willing to participate in a controlled study? We need to understand the extent of this ability. Sure, I guess, Marcus said. But can I ask something? Why is everyone acting like this is scary? Don't you guys like animals? And there it was. The question that made my headache return with vengeance. Vryn looked at me from across the room. Sir, what are we going to do? I thought about the wolves waiting at barriers, the serpents pressing against shields, the countless creatures across the galaxy who had bonded with humans in minutes and grieved their departure for days, that I thought about what would happen if we lifted the ban. Would every animal in captivity try to leave with the nearest human? Would conservation efforts collapse? Would we lose everything we'd worked for? Or worse, what if humans decided they wanted to help? Schedule an emergency vote, I said finally. We need to decide if we're keeping the ban permanent or finding a way to work with Earth. Because one thing is absolutely clear. I gestured at the screen, where Marcus was now showing the ambassador pictures of his dogs on his communication device. The ambassador's face had gone through 7 different colors, which usually indicated existential crisis. Humans don't just connect with animals. They fundamentally change how animals view the world. And we're not prepared for that kind of revolution. Vryn nodded slowly. So, what do we tell the council? I smiled for the first time in days, though it probably looked more like a grimace. We tell them the truth. The galaxy's most dangerous species isn't the one with fangs, or venom, or plasma breath. It's the one that makes every other species want to follow it home. And somehow, we have to figure out what to do about that. Outside my window, I could see the stars. Somewhere out there, on a little blue planet, millions more humans were going about their lives, completely unaware that they'd just become the galaxy's most controversial species. God help us all. So what did you think? Did this story surprise you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this sci-fi story, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe for more mind-blowing science fiction stories every week. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.